Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson. We're continuing our study of the Gospel of Mark. We're in chapter 2, verse 23. We're at the penultimate interaction between Jesus and the Pharisees in this series of 5 events that demonstrate the demise of the relationship where these experts in the law and the Pharisees start out as folks just wanting to get to know Jesus and what he's about, to being open enemies and seeking to kill him. And on this day, we have open confrontation that is clearly hostile. We're going to read about this. It's about fasting. About the observance of the Sabbath. Our last episode was about fasting. This is about observance of the Sabbath. It's interesting to me that as the relationship gets more confrontational and testy, the issue becomes more minor and petty. So they weren't nearly so angry when Jesus forgave sins as they are now that Jesus isn't keeping the Sabbath the way they want him to. It's interesting, but it's typical. My experience has been with congregations that when congregations split and people get angry with each other, it's almost never over theological issues that matter. It's about little things that people elevate to the status of importance, which are not important at all. And so we see that at play here as well. Okay, let's begin reading in chapter 2, verse 23. It came about that he was passing through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and his disciples began to make their way along while picking the heads of grain. And the Pharisees were saying to him, "See here, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" And he said to them, "Have you never read what David did when he was in need and became hungry, he and his companions, how he entered into the house of God in the time of Abiathar the high priest, and ate the consecrated bread, which is not lawful for anyone to eat except the priests, and he gave it also to those who were with him? And he was saying to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Consequently, the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." I don't know any 6 verses that to me pack a bigger punch than these, and they really have been formative for me in the way I use Scripture. If we want to learn to use Scripture the way Jesus, this is the way to do it. Now, Jesus is really giving them book, chapter, and verse this time, as he talks about, what happened in 1 Samuel chapter 21 when David was fleeing from Saul and needed something to eat, and that he ate the showbread in the temple, which he's not allowed, in the tabernacle, which he was not allowed to do. But this is about Sabbath keeping, and they're angry about this. They're angry about this in a way they were never angry when Jesus said he was God. Okay, call yourself God all you want to, but don't mess with our traditions about the Sabbath. And that's where they're coming from. Anyway, what the disciples were doing was they were taking the grain heads, popping the seeds off the grain heads, rubbing them in their hands, blowing the chaff away, and popping the kernels in their mouths. It was like a first century version of corn nuts. I don't know. And they were eating on the way, evidently, because they were hungry. And to the Pharisees, this was defined as threshing grain. And threshing grain is expressly forbidden in Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 25. That is, breaking the Sabbath to thresh grain on the Sabbath. But of course, God in Deuteronomy 23 is forbidding a work day, not getting a quick snack because you're hungry and you need sustenance, which is something that Jesus points out. Listen, you can't apply the law that narrowly. If you do, then you have to condemn David, which the Bible doesn't do. When he went into the tabernacle and ate showbread, that was all fine with God, and it's fine with you. And that is worse than this. So how can that be? If you're going to apply the word that narrowly, then you got real problems with the word and real problems with God himself. I mean, that's what Jesus' answer is to take an Old Testament example and establish the principle, which he then mentions. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Go back and read the Sabbath laws. That is so clear. The reason we can't work on the Sabbath day is that God has ordered a day of rest, not just for the people, but for their servants and their animals as well. The Sabbath is made for man, not man for the Sabbath. This is the principle. And when you use the Sabbath to hurt human beings, then you are breaking the law while you think you are keeping the law. That is an enormous lesson for us because we want to do things right. And we want to narrowly apply the word as narrowly as we can just to make sure we don't get kicked out of heaven on a technicality. Well, that's not the way grace works. And that's not the way God works. That's not the way the word works. And when we use the word that way, we're using it the way Jesus has rejected us using it. And then he moves beyond that principle to its necessary conclusion. He's already established in the very first event, I'm the Son of Man, and I'm also God. I'm the full expression of humanity and divinity in one person. He established that in chapter 2, verse 1 and following. And now he says this, if the Sabbath was made for man, and man for the Sabbath, and that's clear in the word, and I am the Son of Man, God's Messiah, fully human and fully divine, then I'm the one who determines what Sabbath keeping is, not you. Everything is interpreted through the lens of Jesus. Jesus defines everything for us. And so he's able to use the word and in 2 short sentences go from an example to a principle to a necessary theological law, a point that will guide everything else that we think about. The word is itself, as I said so many times, the word is itself the miracle. And when we pay attention to it, that we're more amazed by that than Jesus walking on water. At least I am. And I hope you are as well. But we'll get to the 5th of these episodes next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.